Hello, love beams, and welcome to this episode of To a Child, where we talk about spirituality and therapy and how they cohesively work together. Today, we are talking all about communication. We are your hosts. I am Krystle.
And I am Charmaine.
And we can't wait to get dove into this topic. It's a very, very important topic that Charmaine and I are pretty passionate about.
Yes, because if you cannot communicate effectively in life, life becomes a heck of a lot harder. So, communication is a process of interaction or exchange creating understanding. And that is a basic definition of what communication is. And human communication is really complex. So, diving in, let's just know that there are a lot of different ways to communicate. A lot of things tie into it, but also we're not talking about just communicating with other people. It's also the way that you communicate with yourself. Do you communicate with yourself? Can you hear yourself talk? Meaning, can you hear your body tell you what it needs? This is just important to communication as the actual words that come out of your mouth when you're speaking to another person.
Yeah, absolutely. Your body language is one of the first cues that trigger someone's intuition to whether to how you actually feel, because sometimes the words don't necessarily match what's being presented. So
Right.
body
S-
language.
So, since you brought that up, communication occurs in three basic ways. And we're talking about communication when you're speaking. It's verbal, it's nonverbal, and it's visual. So there are two cues there that don't include words that may affect how you come across to another person.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are saying, I am an active communicator, I tell everything like it is, I have, I don't hold anything back. But if you, what is coming out of your mouth is not matching what you are presenting with your body language or your other nonverbal cues, then that's why, people are will sometimes say, hear what you're saying, but it kind of feels like you don't mean it or you mean another thing.
And that's if they're a good communicator, because if they aren't good at communicating, you're going to end up butting heads and it's going to be a big deal. Like, you may end up in a yelling match with somebody. Maybe you're feeling like you're not heard. So with those in mind, there are, because communication is so complex, to be skillful, there are three foundations, three steps technically to use to communicate effectively. And I pulled these from a book that I've read on nonviolent communication. And that just teaches you how to really essentially communicate effectively without all of the negative portions of it. It literally just teaches you the good stuff. So, those three foundations are leading with presence, coming from a place of curiosity and care, and focusing on what matters. And when you follow those three steps in communicating with other people, they're going to help you immensely, because if you're leading from presence, you're not dragging along what happened in the past into every present moment. It is very hard to do that when you come from a place of trauma, because if something bad happened to you, say at school, you're going to hold that memory that school holds this bad memory. And so every school you attend, you're going to associate immediately off the first that something bad might happen here because it's happened in the past. And that isn't necessarily a good thing, because that school may be wonderful but you won't know it because you are holding on to something from the past that isn't fact here. It was fact in the past. In the present, you have to be in that present moment. Coming from curiosity and care, that is just that is making the other person that is communicating with you feel heard. That is making sure that you're putting yourself in their shoes and taking your experience away from it completely so that you can try to understand, because that's what communication is about. It is to communicate something to understanding to the other person. And then focusing on what matters. There's lots of times that we throw up past things in our arguments. Well, you did this back then. Well, that's not necessarily what is going to matter in that moment. What matters is that you get by whatever those roadblocks are. But if you're holding on too tightly to all of this old stuff, you're not going to be able to pull out what really matters in a situation and get your needs met, or that other person get their needs met. There we go.
Absolutely. So like basically what you're speaking to is the, adage of listen to hear instead of listening to respond.
Oh, yes.
And when you listen to hear, there are things that you need to actively do to actively listen. You want to make a connection with the person that you're listening to because they have got a story that they are trying to tell you, and it's important to them. So, to not be letting your thoughts run away with you while you are listening to that person speak, and actually be actively listening, like your undivided attention, focused presence. You're giving them, whenever you're trying to be mindful and present by listening to them, you're trying to give them, you're holding space for them. You are giving them the full presence of yourself as a person, to because that what they're looking for is your ear, not your understanding necessarily. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I think where you're going is right. I was following, but you're exactly right that listening is such a key point in communication because, like you said, if the other person isn't following along with you, like they're listening to respond, they're thinking in their head now of a response instead of actually listening to you finish this important thing that you're trying to tell them. So, and what you essentially would want to do in order to have that other person feel like they were heard, that you listen to them, is say, so what I hear you're saying is, or what you said made me just feel this way. It could be anything to express that you heard what they say and you have an understanding of where this conversation is going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like become interested in them, what it is that they have to say. Like so much of people trying to communicate is seeking outside validation. And so a person that is seeking outside validation is listening to respond and is not listening to understand. And that outside validation is is like me, I. And so you're not getting, I'm trying to figure out how exactly I'm trying to say this. I see it in my head the right way. But you become interested in the person. Ask about them. try. There's a quote that by Teal Swan is, you will get more friends by becoming interested in other people than you ever will by trying to get those people to be interested in you.
That's
And
true.
that profoundly hit me because, I mean, like, I try very, very hard to be an understanding person that can hold space for someone, because that's what I want to do, is to be a healer. That's, what you like to do. What we are as as friends are doing together on this podcast, is trying to teach people how to heal. And so,
Mhm.
like, you really need to get down to the nitty gritty and find out who they are as a person, and just effectively listen.
I mean, you don't necessarily need to care about every person that comes at you with their life, because sometimes other people's lives trigger responses within you. And I think key there is knowing when to respond and when not to, when to put up a barrier or a boundary and when to let it go. That's hard for everybody, and we have to find our own way in those abilities to set boundaries so that we don't get triggered so hard. I had written down something from my notes that I thought was actually really profound itself, was that when we were talking, we touched a moment on how you communicate with yourself. That's
Mhm.
intrapersonal communication. Interpersonal is when you're communicating with other people. Personal, yeah, words, they confuse me. Intrapersonal communication skills are the foundation of emotional intelligence. And I know we've already covered emotional intelligence and how important that is. But the way you talk to yourself is really important too. There's a book that I buy the teenagers in this family that's kind of like their coming of age book. And it is How to Not Be a Dick. There is a book that is How to Not Be a Dick. And one of the first pages in the book tells you that if you are a dick to yourself, it'll eventually leak out and you will be a dick to other people. You just can't help it until you learn how to effectively communicate with yourself and be compassionate with yourself. You're not really going to show that same compassion for other people. I find it with myself all the time. When I find myself being irritated by, say, somebody else in my life that has drama that I don't want any drama in my life, but they're drama, drama, drama. But I feel my trigger pop up. It's usually like it's an anxious feeling. Like I suddenly become anxious. Like I need to be doing something about whatever drama is going on in this person's life. And that anxiety tends to overtake me. Then I start questioning things in my own life. Well, I have to put up boundaries against those types of interactions, because anything that makes me do that is taking away from my overall happiness. I have to be focused on creating my own happiness, not worrying about other people's happiness, you know?
Absolutely. Effectively, this brings me to one of the notes that I wrote down, because we were just kind of glanced into it. But effectively communicating your boundaries is a very, very important skill to learn how to do, because you can set all the boundaries in the world and they can get walked right over. I don't know how many times that I have actually had to put my bitch hat on, and because I've subtly given those boundaries, like, okay, I don't want to talk about that anymore because we're obviously not on the same page, or I really don't appreciate doing this kind of thing, or I really don't appreciate this kind of behavior. And then all of those types of things continue to keep going, and I've had to go, look, I have set a boundary, a clear boundary, and you were just walking all over it. And I'm not okay with that. You have to learn how to, how to set boundaries. Like right now, my almost 15-year-old son, the boundary setting with him is difficult because I'm sitting there, I'm like trying to not get angry, but I'm getting upset over, for example, I had a crystal that I bought, and it was for a specific purpose, for a specific thing, and it was laying on my bed when I was dusting off my cabinet. And he came in and he was like, "What's this?" and started playing with it, like, popping it in his hand. And I was like, "I would appreciate if you wouldn't do that. I would really appreciate it. I would, that's really important to me. Like, you need to." And I'm like, "Okay." Finally, at about 10 minutes of this, and I was like, "All right, listen. I have told you every way I know how to tell you, and you are not comprehending what I am telling you. I'm setting a boundary, and that boundary is to put that down because it's important to me, and you're not listening." And he's like,
Mhm.
"Ooh." So, like, effectively communicating boundaries is a huge, huge part of effective communication.
And that story right there goes back to being present during the conversation. If you're in your head thinking something else and tossing something around in the air, you are not listening to the person who may be trying to tell you something about that item that you're tossing around. Like, it's classic not being present, not hearing in the moment. Like, he probably heard, but it wasn't hearing. He heard it, but he didn't listen to it.
And
And
he's got this, like, I'm going to tease my mom because I think it's funny whenever she gets, prickly.
mhm.
That's the last thing I want is to be prickly. Stop it.
So I know we've talked about mindfulness tons and being present a little bit as well, because it's been equally important in a lot of things that we've talked about, that being present. Why is it hard to be present? Well, I wrote down why it's hard to be present. Number one, it's vulnerable. It's face to face. Being present face to face and looking at somebody when you're telling them that something makes you unhappy, when you know that telling them that this makes you unhappy might make them unhappy, that's a very vulnerable place to be. Um, because when you're communicating, you're also, that's kind of, you're face to face with somebody, they could attack you. You're face to face. Now you gotta protect. Like, you don't know, that's a built-in kinda default setting for human race to keep ourselves safe, for survival mechanisms, that's what that is. Um, the second is social engagement can activate the nervous system, putting us on edge. So automatically, when you start to socially engage with somebody else, your nervous system puts you on edge already. That's built into your system too. We tend to focus our attention outward on the other person or inward on our thoughts, losing the sense of relatedness and the connection. So, if you're listening and not paying attention to what's going on inside of you while they're talking, you're not present. If you're listening to them and fully focused on them and what they're saying, then you're not paying attention to what's going on inside your body. How are you processing this information? You kind of have to have a balance there. And then the last reason that it's hard is because we haven't practiced it. I can tell you that it was really hard for me to set boundaries because I'd never set up any face-to-face interactions, made me nervous. Social interaction made me nervous. I was always afraid of making the other person angry at me because that was what I expected throughout life, was that the people around me are just always going to be angry, and I'm going to have to do what I can do to please everybody around me so that everybody's happy. But that in turn leaves me feeling miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, basically, one of the key skills that I always, come back to, and it kind of oversimplifies it, but undersimplifies it as well, is that when you're communicating, you need to keep in mind that the person that you're talking to has their own perception. And so what they are saying is a reflection of them, not of you. It is, and your thoughts are a reflection of you, not of them. So that's like kind of the jumping off point or the diving board point for like for me for going into communication is that you have to also have that separation of self from those issues or what that person's thoughts are or what that person's words are, because that's not of you, it's of them.
Mhm. And those emotions that come up that make you feel the need that you've gotta maybe jump into the story right now to share what you have, or, all of those type things come from some sort of distortion that you might have. You have to be open to the fact that this human being in front of you trying to communicate with you didn't grow up in your household, probably, possibly didn't grow up in an area near you at all. Maybe they're from a different place in society. Maybe they're rich or elite, or maybe super, super poor, and you've been somewhere in the middle your whole life. You don't know where these other people are coming from. So if you're just open to what they have to say, you don't have to take it on as your own experience, but it's knowledge, hearing what they have to say from their perspective, from their point of view. And that's what creates understanding. And that's what we should be after in communication is understanding, not disagreement. It's great to disagree, but if you can come to an understanding of where each person is coming from, then you've come to a place of understanding, not a place of disagreement. You can disagree, but you don't have to carry the hatred that comes along with it.
Yo, absolutely. That's like, I mean, I know I say it all the time, but that is why I despise social media.
I have to remind
Because
myself that people post in their emotions, that something emotionally triggered them and they had a need that needed met right that moment. And that need was they needed to feel heard. So they had to put it out there. I've done it a few times myself on certain issues, but now I'm a lot less likely to fire off because if my emotions go from 0 to 100, I know I'm triggered. If I'm feeling just fine, kind of scrolling through a social media and then suddenly I'm super angry and hot, that's a flag to me. It's a flag to me that I'm working off of my emotional mind and I need to take a step back and remind myself that this person, excuse me, that this person is not me and this person is going to handle something that the way they want to handle it or view something the way they want to view it. Even if they're on social media and trying to cram it down my throat, I don't have to accept it. Just because it's there doesn't mean I have to read it. If I read the first sentence and it sounds like it's one of those posts, I scroll right on by. You know what? Fulling that thing right on up, let them go zing like a wheel of fortune.
I am the queen of, I believe I will unfollow you for 30 days. I believe I will unfollow you for 30. You know what? I've unfollowed you like 4 times and your posts are still like just woo crazy out there. So, and I
The
don't
unfriend.
resonate with it. So I'll just unfollow you completely, but we can remain friends. I just can't. I can't. I don't like seeing that negativity on my feed. Of course, I'm hardly ever on Facebook now, but when I am, now I've gotten it to where it's all like, it's the good stuff, it's like the stuff that, it's what's wonderful in the world and inspirational quotes and spiritual things. And it's just like, oh, my feed is so peaceful. I love it.
Uh, Oh man.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so like, whenever that argumentativeness comes out, when that social media need to post, and you, Charmaine, have got this great little thing where you say, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And if it doesn't meet those three things, you don't post it.
Yes.
And that, I think that should be true for everybody. It should be true for
Hmm.
everybody. I have told so many people that, and they are all like, that's it right there.
It is. It
So
is super
instead
key.
of arguing, seek out common ground. Really try to find where's the commonality. Okay, We may completely disagree on this subject, but we both agree that something needs to be done about it. There's common ground. Okay, well then you can like start a discussion based on your common ground. Well, I don't think this would work because of XYZ. I don't think that this would work because of ABC. But the common ground is it's common ground is that understanding that you're talking about. Look
Mhm.
for the place where you can come to that understanding and that common ground.
Yep. I was going to go into checkpoints, but checkpoints are just a place in conversation, where you either choose to listen or you choose to speak. Choosing to speak, like you said, Crystal, those three gates are a wonderful thing. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it truth? If those three things apply, then it's something you can go ahead and say. But if it's one of them is off, it's probably not worth what's going to come back at you if you if you do it. But
And remember, like, you are your thoughts. So the more you talk negatively to yourself, the more you portray those thoughts outwardly. The more
mhm,
you talk negatively outwardly, the more it affects you personally. So
yep,
it's just a never ending cycle, is that until you make the conscious choice to, okay, it's not true, it's not necessary, it's not kind, I don't need to say it. What can I say that are those three things? Then you are able start changing your overall outlook, because the negativity is coming from unhealed places within yourself.
mhm,
What can you do to not be so negative? What can you do to not lash out at people? I mean, I've seen people lash out and I'm just like, that was unnecessary. Why would you do that? There was no cause for that at all. But we reacted to a trigger that, if you would have just taken a breath and realize that the situation was not what you were making it out to be in your head, that you wouldn't have had to have that reaction, and you would
mhm.
have been communicating more effectively
Right.
instead of like,
It is so important to not react. Reactions are good. If you're having a reaction, it's usually because there's a need within you that you would like to have met. That's how that works. So, you have to really be in touch yourself. If you're not compassionate to yourself, it's going to be hard to be compassionate towards other people in the world. If you're telling yourself you should be doing this, this, and this, and this, but you're super kind to everybody else in the world, that's like a trauma response right there. The reason I did that type of trauma response was because I really thought that I could affect whether or not people got angry with me. Guess what? I could make people angry all the time if I really tried, if I didn't pay attention to what I said all the time. I still occasionally do make people angry. But at least, I used to make my kids angry all the time.
I think that's our job
but
as moms, is to make our kids angry, honestly.
but
Okay.
the thing is that the more I tried to be kind to myself, the more I could see where other people were struggling like I was when I was at my most unhealed. I struggled because I couldn't be kind to myself. I had to start with not calling myself stupid every time I made a mistake. That's how simple it is, but how difficult it is. Because you don't understand how many times I call myself stupid in a day sometimes. I would berate myself. Stupid was the nicest thing I called myself 13 years ago. But now I don't immediately call myself stupid for making a mistake. I usually go, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't being mindful." That's why I made a mistake. I literally wasn't being present, wasn't focused, and wasn't being mindful in the moment. That's why I make mistakes. So I have to bring myself back to that mindfulness all the time. And how we say something is equally as important, if not more important, than what we say. Because if you are, say, saying how much you appreciate and love somebody, but you have a pissed off face and is really snappy in the way you say it, guess what? You're not coming off as a nice person. You're coming off as kind of aggressive and
Yeah, and aggression is not a way to lead into communication, because aggression, it does not matter who you are. If you are met with aggression in communication, you you have a reaction. You will either, fight back, you're gonna flee away, you're going to freeze, or you're going to fawn and try to make it into a better situation. So coming at anyone with any kind of aggression is insane. Like,
I've actually had that happen to me recently where I met somebody new and they were very nice, but the way they talked was very aggressive. The way they came across was very aggressive. And though they seemed nice, for me, it put me in a place where I felt timid. Like I was afraid to do anything that might set this person off because I could tell that if they got set off, it was going to be a big explosion. And I'm sure you've met people like that in your life. I'm sure listeners have met people in their life where, they've met someone and they just know in their gut that if they somehow make this person unhappy, they're going to be explosively unhappy. And it's scary. It's scary, especially if you come from a place where you're dragging along your trauma from childhood, where people yelled when you were a kid and it made you timid. That timid feeling still comes over me every time I find myself around or in a situation where somebody is aggressive in their communication style, where they're very, this is the way it is for me and that's it, and I won't put up with anything. Like, it immediately puts me in a place where I feel very small and like I need to bubble myself because I get a little bit afraid. I remind myself now when that happens, because it's going to happen. There's all sorts of folks out there, people, and unless you shut yourself in your house and hide away from everybody, unless you do that, you're going to experience these people in your life. They're going to come along out of the blue and you're going to automatically have a response. Well, ask yourself, is that a trauma response? Maybe that's a distortion in thought. Maybe you're just seeing their trauma on them. And if you take a moment, you might stop and think, wow, something really bad must have happened to them as a kid or as an adult, young, that they are carrying around this weight with them. That's what I think now.
so I have a story to add to yours, because it just happened a couple of days ago as well. And it was the most, and I had a little bit different of a reaction. Mine was like, I'm ready to fight back, like, just because, my hackles went up and I was like, how dare you? So this is a story. My mom was with me. We were in a car. We were on our way to go to a drumming circle. And so I was following the GPS, driving, and I was taking me through a neighborhood because we were going to a park. And so there were cars on both sides of the street, like almost all the way up and down. There were cars, 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 cars. And I saw another car turn on the street, and I stopped and I waited for a second, and they pulled towards the curb to let me go by. So I started driving down, and I got more than halfway down, and all of a sudden this person decided that they were going to come to. And they pulled right up to my bumper and were like, honked at me and went, and I was like, no, you go back. That guy got out of his car, slammed his door, marched around to my window, and he was like, I live right there. You need to move. Blah blah blah. And I was like, sir, obviously you do not understand how driving works. I have the right of way. Since I was coming down at first, you pulled over to let me go through. So I started driving. And he was like, you don't need to be. I am a nice person. I am a nice person. I was like, what you are is drunk.
Yeah. You sure are nice
So I mean, he
now.
was just like, and so I backed up and he continued. And I was like, go get in your car and go in your driveway so I can go past. Like, what is your problem? It was like, you are such a nice person. Obviously, you are a very, very person aggressively.
Aggressively nice. Sure, you're real nice. I can tell all over your body, face, and language, everything. That's nonverbal communication right there.
Right. I'm like, dude,
You can't
you are off
you
your
can't tell
rocker. What
me.
is wrong with you?
You can't tell me you're nice if you're literally yelling at it aggressively in my face. I'm sorry, you're not going to convince me you're nice.
I was like, do you understand? I
Oh,
literally like looked at him and I was like, do you understand the concept of right of way while you're driving? Just
right.
curious. Because you
Like you
pulled
shouldn't
over
have
and
pulled
let me
over.
go through and then continued to drive on like it would have been so much easier for him to back up.
Mhm.
Literally. Because there was one car over there that he went around. Like that's all the far he and I had
Uh,
gone through past like 10 cars. Like like you did that on purpose just to be a dick. Like there's no other explanation and you were met with someone that would not let you walk all over them.
right,
That's
right.
it. My
So
mom and I were both like, what in the world?
I
Like who
but like
behaves that way?
it's a good thing we're going to something spiritual because I might not be spiritual right now.
I was like, man, the energy over here.
So
Sheesh.
listen to this sentence basically I pulled from a book. The book I pulled it from is Say What You Mean, A Mindful Approach to Nonviolent Communication. It's by Oren J. Soper. Looks like this. Very good book if you want to learn anything about interpersonal communication. In there, it says, when we are stuck in habitual, conditioned views of conflict, our attention becomes narrowly focused on a way of seeing that is rooted in negative experiences of the past. That right there is what you're trying to get by when you're speaking in the present moment, when you're coming from care and curiosity. You're not bringing all the garbage that happened to you into the past into this present moment. When I was a kid, since I was a kid, I will say, I have never liked, I have nothing against them. let me let me rephrase that. As a child growing up, I had a very bad experience with a police officer. So I grew up with this mindset that even though police were supposed to help you, they were dangerous themselves. So carrying on that all the way through life, that meant every time there was a cop behind me, every time I saw a cop in an outside place, every time one was anywhere near me, I immediately had a physical body reaction because I was immediately triggered by a past event. I couldn't be present in any one moment because if I saw a cop, it was going to throw me into the past. Now, police officer, not all police officers are bad. Just because you have a negative experience with one doesn't mean all of them out there are the same thing. That's a trauma response in the extreme. Just like you wouldn't just assume every cop is good, that every cop is out for your best interest. That's another dangerous assumption. You have to have balance in everything, balance in communication, balance in your views as well.
And that goes with like anybody. It could be a teacher that you've had that
Yes.
experience with. It could be just your dad. So you have that aversion to males. It could be, there's a multitude of different ways that that same trauma could present. It's not, there's, oh, well,
And
I
what
don't
is
like
it?
Democrats because I had a bad experience with one time, or I don't like Republicans because I had a, there's a I don't like politics because I have a bad experience with listening to politics, like there's a whole
Right.
different.
And to be honest, this is another default setting that is within our bodies, that if something makes us feel bad, we stay away from it. It is part of that survival response. The things that make us feel good and safe are the things we want to be around. Anything that triggers that reaction that there's danger, we run away from. So this is literally us developing habits as children, as young people, and then not being able to let go of those habits, not being able to step outside and change those habits because we've never done it before and it's scary. Let me tell you, anything that you've never done before is going to be scary the first time you do it. And it's going to be like that for everybody. Nobody goes into a brand new situation and is like, oh, yay. Everybody has some sort of nerves, some sort of stage fright, some sort of something that happens with them because of uncertainty. We're human. We all experience uncertainty. It's realizing that all of us experience it. It's okay. It's okay to be uncertain because the moment you finally get in there and do that thing that's making you uncertain, next time it's going to be easier because it wasn't so bad this time. I had to make myself say hello to police officers. I walked through the VA hospital and saw a police officer all the time. So it wasn't like it was out of the realm, me having to go out of my way to say hello to a police officer to get by this trigger. But that's how I got by this trigger, was that I had to start talking to them. I had to make them human in my mind, not monsters in my mind. And in order to do that, you kind of have to get to know people. So it's creating the discussion, making myself tell myself that it is okay, that this cop isn't the cop that did bad things. This is a different person, and they could be different if I give them a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole thing, is like that we have to, that comes back to your thoughts are a reflection of you, not of them, and vice versa. Their thoughts are a reflection of them and not of you. And that's, like we've met so many people in, in plain clothes, not in their day job. No matter, like, we've met teachers, we've met police officers, we've met nurses and doctors, and the at the end of the day, whenever they're all just people, they all have their own trials, their own tribulations, and their own traumas, and they're all trying to get by in a world at their current level of understanding.
As I start really listening to people as they're talking to me, listening to what they say to me, listening to how they say it to me, I now can talk to people and see where their trauma lies. I can tell that something had happened, that there's something that they're struggling hard to get over. The thing about that is the only way to get over the things that you've disassociated from is to associate back with them. And that's painful for anybody. Um, Trying to learn to communicate better by really learning how to communicate with yourself is one of the hardest things to do, because think about it, like when I started therapy at 38 years old, that's 38 years of habitually doing things a certain way, habitually talking to myself negatively, habitually viewing the world around me as a dangerous, negative place to be. That is very hard to overcome. You can't just flip the switch and go, well, guess what? Today I'm going to be different, because it doesn't work that way, because it's habit. We have to break the habits, and breaking habits is hard. Ask anybody who's quit smoking or drinking. Ask those people. It's not easy to give up things that have become habitual.
No, absolutely not. And that's the whole thing is like, goes back to, you have to change the energy, because until you are capable of changing that negative self-talk, the subconscious mind does not understand a joke. So everything that you think, it takes literally. So all you're doing is adding, compiling more on top of more on top of more on top of more. And now you've created a bunch of layers. Now, whenever you're ready to start healing and actually start communicating and with yourself, especially, there's these layers that you now have to start peeling back to get down to the true sense of who you actually are. And then, because all of the traumas that we have are a construct of the ego. We've discussed that before. And so you've really got to peel it all away in order to be able to be the person that you envision as being. And I mean, like, some people just want to be negative and want to be a jerk and want to be an asshole, and and there's nothing that you can do or say about it. There's nothing that you can do to change them other than what you like to say about planting the seeds.
Just plant the seed. Be a seed planter of positivity, even if the seed is, you know, self-compassion is really important. There are a lot of people in my life that I try to remind them that self-compassion is the most important. And some of them blow me off and are like, yeah, right. I was one of those people that used to make fun of myself because making fun of myself meant that anybody else making fun of me would never surprise me with anything because I'm already making fun of myself. That was me not trusting that there are people out there that are healthy to be around, that not everybody is going to make fun of me. Eventually, I'm going to find that tribe that embraces me with all my weirdness. Like, I didn't know that stuff existed until around 2013.
Hello,
2000
tribe.
2013, my tribe appeared before me in the most weird, miraculous way, but it required me taking a huge step outside of my comfort zone and doing something that was terrifying to me. And in doing that, I gained a whole tribe of people. I gained family. I may not actually talk to all of my blood relatives now, but I have family that I've created on my own that give me that place to feel like I belong. That if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I had to
Okay.
learn to communicate to get there too. So it's important.
Right. Okay. So this is something that we've talked about before, but I put it down on my notes, is intimacy. Have intimacy in communication. It is not about sexual relations. That is, I'm
Intimacy
going to
does
make that
not
point
equal
right now.
sex. Exactly. Intimacy does not equal sex. Intimacy is something on its own.
Yes, intimacy can enhance sex, because to have that kind of emotional intimacy with someone can lead to a very emotionally intimate lovemaking. That's one thing. But intimacy is not, because you could, like, look at it this way. Um, Ask the rape victim, was that intimate for you? Ask the man that had a one night stand at the bar, was that intimate for you? Because the answer is going to be no. It's not, that's not where intimacy comes from. And intimacy is very personal, nitty gritty, getting down to know you. It's not surface level. It's deep. It's being known for who and what you really are, and to not just, like, Like, for example, I don't think that there's any intimacy with most of my family. They don't know who I am. They like to tell people how I am. And whenever I hear back from people, well, your family said that you were this way. And I'm like, is that so? Like, I don't know me at all. Or like, whenever you open a Christmas gift and you're like,
Oh.
I'm supposed to be grateful, but I don't understand why I'm being given this. Like, there's intimacy in knowing someone, really knowing them. And if you do intimacy is, if break down intimacy into right, well, how do I say that? Break down intimacy like this: into me, see into me, intimacy.
I get it.
Right, so
I
that,
got
I
that.
feel like
I
it's
got
very
it already.
important. It's
And it,
important to
and it
me.
really is. It kind of goes back to, I think I wrote a couple of notes on it. Listening with ears is less fine than listening with the heart. That's like an actual quote from someone, a guru. Um, but when we come from curiosity and care, we're willing and able to listen. That's when we're able to empty ourselves and make space to receive something new. And that may just be seeing that other person as who they are and allowing them to be who they are without putting an expectation on them, without putting a preconceived uh, notion on them of what you believe they should be, just allowing them to be who they are. That is what intimacy is. And it's funny because like you said, my parents don't know me anymore. They don't know the person that I am now because we haven't talked for, well, since 2020. So they have no idea the person that I am turning into now, but it is also something that I don't feel I need to find and explain and make right. Because if it's going to be made right, it'll be made right on its own, and I won't have to force it, because anything that I have to force isn't worth my time. So, that's kind of just where I see it now. Being able to do that is way hard because you've got to overcome all those societal norms now. So, the lack of communication from my side of the family isn't really a whole lot to do with me at this point, because what I have to say is something that they might not be able to hear right now. It doesn't mean that down the road they won't grow and be able to hear what I have to say. However, right now it's just not the time. And divine timing is everything in spirituality. You can't rush anything. It has to be the way it's going to be. So allowing it to be the way it is and to develop the way it'll develop when it hits that point to develop again, we'll wait and see. Until then, I can't be preoccupied with it and worrying about it, because that's just going to bring me unhappiness. I can't do anything about that right now, but what I can do is work on myself and make sure that my well-being is good. And my well-being is good. So, good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm same thing. Like, I've recently discovered that my family is still just not ready for what I've got to say yet, because I blow their preconceived notions completely out of the water whenever I
Yep.
speak. Like,
Mhm.
this is, I mirror to them exactly how toxic they are. And so it always comes back on me being the one that gets, spit on and chewed up and spit out and all of that. And I have grown enough in my healing that I refuse to allow, and I set boundaries and won't and refuse to allow it. And instead of them understanding that what I'm doing is setting a boundary, because I cannot I can't swim in the pool of your toxicity. And they don't, instead that it's I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm a horrible parent, and I'm not coming around, so I'm being awful by not, family is family. You have to love and respect your family. And that's the most dangerous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That that's your dad, or that's your mom, or that's your grandma, or that's your grandpa, or that's your sister, or that's your brother, or that's your aunt, or that's your, anything.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the most dangerous statements that we can make, because that makes people literally just go back and stay in the cesspool of toxicity. It is, if it's toxic, it's toxic, like if it's better for your own mental health to remove yourself from those situations, because those are situations in which communication is not being effectively done. We're not setting boundaries, we're not listening, we're not hearing what going on with around us, and we are not noticing the hurt that we are causing because of those things. Stop telling people that's your mom or that's your family. You have to love them, you have to respect them, you have to forgive them. No, you don't. Forgive if you want to forgive, but only forgive for yourself. Don't
Mm-hmm.
forgive for them, because that's what they want, is your forgiveness for themselves, for their own peace of mind. And they don't
Right.
deserve it. They have to apologize to you in their own right, but they need to forgive themselves and you on their own terms. It's not up to you.
It's not your job to forgive somebody who has hurt you in your life. The forgiveness is something you do for yourself. It is never for the other person. It just never is. For them who and for you, if you have wronged somebody, that's on you. That is on you to forgive you for doing it, but also to make sure that you're aware that you do not do it again or in the future. And that's what boundaries are for. When people break your boundaries, when people walk over your boundaries and do things to you that make you feel bad, you have to have presence with yourself to stand up for yourself, because otherwise it builds resentment. Yeah, you know what? It may not, maybe it stung a little, but it wasn't that bad. Well, guess what? They think they can do it because you didn't stop them and set the boundaries. So now every time it happens, it is going to get worse, or you're going to get a little bit more resentment. Now maybe it's not resentment you're holding anymore. Now it might be anger. What if it turns into rage because you're letting it build up instead of saying, "Hey, will you please put the dishes away after I wash them? They're in the dishwasher. Can't you just do this one thing?" You know, you can build rage over simple little things like that. People, people are going to be more willing to listen if they feel heard. That's a key part to communication. If you can effectively listen to somebody and make them feel heard, they're more likely to listen to what you have to say before completely shooting you down, unless they're working off of their trauma. Because trauma responses, you're going to get them from everybody in the world because we all have them. We all have a little trauma response somewhere. Oh, I shouldn't click my pin. It was right by the microphone.
That's funny. Okay, so to be able to do that, what do? You relate to them.
Mm-hmm.
Repeat back to them. So what I hear you saying is this.
Yep.
What I hear you're feeling is this. Be compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
You really, mimic their body language, like, unless they're being aggressive, and but
Right.
like if they're like, if they're like leaning forward into you. This is something that we learned in uh, counseling
Mm-hmm.
training, spiritual counseling training, anyway, is that if they're leaning forward, like, lean forward. If they're like, like really getting into it, and mimic their movements, like lean toward it. If they're leaning back, kind of lean back, like there's let them know that you are being receptive to them with your body language. And then also by validating some of their words, I hear that you're saying this. That way that they confirm back to you, yes, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly it. Just,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, but paraphrase it, not don't like go
Right, right. You don't
way
have to
long
repeat
into
the whole,
it.
yeah, you don't have to repeat the whole conversation. It's a reflection that you're using. You're going to reflect a little bit on what they said so that they understand that you heard what it is that they're saying. And and we need to really kind of practice focusing on what matters, because sometimes we get caught up in all the unnecessary fluff. I know in making boundaries, there's specific ways, as we discussed them, on how you make a boundary, how to describe the situation, but not go into all of the past stuff. Just describe what is happening right now that isn't working for me. This isn't working for me. I'm going to need this. And if you can't do this, then we can't do this. It's like there's a structure to that boundary, which means there's always a can't think of the word. There is a consequence. Ha, I found it. Consequences. Consequences to your boundaries are very important, because if you don't uphold the consequence that you said is going to happen, then guess what? You're going to have somebody that habitually breaks your boundaries because they learn it doesn't mean anything. You're still going to talk to them. You're still going to give them your full attention. Back to what you were talking about, attention and, paying attention. You ever been on the phone with somebody and you're telling them a story, and they're doing the uh-huh, but you can hear that they're kind of far away from their phone, so you assume that they're probably playing a game or texting somebody else at the same time. Sometimes my friends that do that to me will be like, "Oh, sorry, I'm texting so and so right now," or, tell me that, communicate it. But have you ever had those people that don't communicate it, and they're just kind of like there, and you're like, you start to feel unheard. And once you start to feel unheard, you don't even want to talk anymore. Like, I'll be mid-story and I'll just quit. But because I can tell that they're not listening to me anymore. And I know that they weren't listening to me because they immediately jump into a story of their own. And I'm like, oh, we're talking about this now. Or sometimes it's completely off topic and I have no idea what we're talking about now, but somebody's explaining to me something and I'm like, wait, what's happening? That's a classic not listening to the conversation. It's easy to lose friends that way, because if you're not actually paying attention to what they are telling you, then are you really there for them as a friend? And once you stop actually being there for them as a friend in that capacity, you might find them drifting away from you. The reasons why is because maybe what you're communicating or what you're not communicating is affecting what is happening within the relationship.
That kind of, on the flip side of that too, is the person that is not effectively communicating while they are trying to tell the story because they are distracted while they are talking.
Right.
That happens to me, and I'm like, I can hear like clicking in the background, or I can hear a video game being played, or various things, and I'm just like, and so their story is like really long and drawn out with lots of pauses, and you're like, okay, so I'm here giving you my presence and listening, trying to actively listen to what you're saying, but you are not actually actively communicating with me. You are telling me a story while you are distracted doing something else. It's the same thing. It goes the other way too. So,
Yep.
it's not just about actively listening, it's how to actively communicate and be present in the conversation that you have instigated as well.
Exactly. This little thing here, this little thing is destructive to many relationships because it takes away this communication, and what you send via this doesn't have the same reflection because you're missing the nonverbal cues that go along with communication and the visual. Because, if I can't see you, I can't see what you're doing, but I can hear what you're telling me, and maybe it sounds off. It sounds inauthentic. If I'm reading it via text, I have none of the tone, I have none of the nonverbal. I just have written communication, and that loses a lot in translation.
Right. And then that's the whole thing too, is like you cannot infer tone from text. Some people can if they're super, super empathic.
Mhm.
Like I do sometimes. I'm like, ooh, that was a little harsh, but like I feel the energy off of that. But it's, you really can't you don't have a good understanding of where the energy was at whenever that was sent. And so
Mhm.
it causes a lot of understandings,
Yes.
because it is not, even you and I are like, have had times where I'm like, remember, we can't infer tone from text, right? And you're like, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, usually cucumber comes up. Wait, what do
Cucumber.
you mean cucumber? I didn't say anything. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's all it is remember, communication is about creating understanding. If there's a lack of understanding, then your communication isn't clear. Now, I run into this with like one of my children, bless their little heart. They have a really hard time communicating. And the communication style is usually they tell a story and then the story comes back out a little bit different. And then again, it's like three of the same story in a row, a little bit different each time, maybe with an extra laugh at the end. But it's usually filled with negative connotation, condon, condensations. No, connotations,
Connotations.
connotation. Words. But anyway, like she just can't sometimes put it together. And that's just it. It's wanting to communicate, but not fully understanding how to get understanding. I'll have my son call me and say, my sister won't do this. It's really pissing me off. And I'm like, well, are you just expecting her to do that? Did you ask her to do that? Did you tell her in a nice way that you need help accomplishing this task, not telling her to do something? Because all of those little bits of information change the way you communicate. If you're asking for help getting your needs met versus just telling somebody to do the dishes.
Yeah. I was like, was that thought done?
I think so.
So like we've talked about it a little bit, but like, how about just the energy that you present to people while you communicate? Being
Confidence.
warm.
Confidence in yourself, in your
Yeah.
ability to be kind, or to be a kind person. You know what? I know people that pride themselves on being assholes. And though I really do love some of these assholes, it really like stings me inside. Like there's a little bit of me that stings every time they call themselves that, because that right there tells me that they have less self-compassion for themselves. It's like it's you see that little point of conflict within themselves. They haven't found a way to create their own happiness yet. They're still looking for that external thing that's going to create their happiness. And they get lost in it. You get lost in it. And then you just assume you're an asshole. Maybe you're not an asshole. Maybe you're just a different type of person who needs a specific tribe. I was definitely a different type of person that needed a specific tribe. I'm just shocked I found it. But that's all it is. And it's a matter of actually that again, being vulnerable, being face to face with other people who are different. That is that step that's so hard to get by because those are the things that trip us up in our communication.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, you know, being just compassionate and being a, you know, loving and really, being open, And you said listening with your heart. That's a very, very important aspect because the heart is so much stronger than the brain. Like scientific studies have proven that, the energy field from the brain is vastly smaller than the energy field from the heart. So you to me that and the heart is where, the seat of processing of emotions comes from. Like we feel the emotions here in our heart. So,
That's if we feel them,
listening with
though.
that heart. Hmm?
That's if we feel them. So if we don't
Yeah.
feel them, then what we're doing is pushing all of that into our body. Um, if we don't allow our heart to feel it, if we don't allow our emotional centers to process our emotions and we stuff them, then they metabolize in our body. That's where these mysterious illnesses come from. That's where now all of a sudden I have to go to a dermatologist because my skin is breaking out, but there's no reason it's breaking out. I have asthma, but there's no reason I have asthma. I have acid reflux, but there's no reason that I have the acid reflux or the IBS. That's another one that is a typical stress response that your body produces when it's not running properly. When it's not running properly is when we're ignoring our body communication to us, when our body tells us that we need something. Um, a lot of us don't listen to our own bodies anymore because we've just never been told how deep that connection is and how important that connection is. We just assume our bodies are our bodies, but if we don't take care of what's up in here and what's in here, everything else falls apart. This runs everything. If this isn't right, the rest of this isn't going to be right, and vice versa.
Right, absolutely. I mean, the brain and the heart are the two most important organs in the body to me. Just,
Mhm.
I mean, and even to me, the heart is the most important. But, I mean, like, because the body can live without the brain. Like,
Mhm.
you can be brain dead, and your
Yeah.
body can be alive.
Mhm. Happens
And
on
and
Walking
but
Dead.
your body cannot live without the heart. Not really.
Right?
I mean,
No.
like your
You
heart
would
stops.
have to
There's no
You
more.
need a new heart if your heart stops working. You can't live without a heart in you that works.
Yeah, I mean, I know they've talked about brain transplants, and I'm like, that kind of seems unethical to me. But
That seems I d how I
once this is gone, and once all of the memories are gone, the person is no longer there.
Right, because
The ego, yeah,
all you
yeah,
are is accumulation of your experiences. What all of those bad things that happen to us, we grow over and learn from, and that takes us to kind of who we are in our brain. It's the combination of experiences that we have. That's what we can share. That's what we can tell other people. But once that's gone, there you don't if you don't have that collection of memories, you don't your soul is gone because your soul is made up of how you feel about things. And and if you don't feel anything about anything, then are you really there? Do you really have a soul?
yeah. It's like all of our experiences in this lifetime, if you believe in reincarnation, all of the experiences in this lifetime are what die. Your soul, what you truly are, is infinite. It goes on forever. It'll never die. It'll always be. It just transforms into different aspects. And but like all of your experiences, all your what your name is, all of those things, those all go with you when you pass. So, I mean, like you just they are experiences, they're soul less all of your experiences are soul lessons to
Mhm,
carry on, to grow, because that's what Earth is a school of how to have a human experience. And
mhm.
You don't have good experiences without the bad experiences, because how would you know it was good if you hadn't experienced the bad?
Right. Absolutely. And that in essence makes up. I mean, that's if we are energy, we are made up of electrical impulses. That's a fact. You can see the electrical impulses in our brain on scans. So once the meat suit skeleton, magic skeleton dies here, then our energy goes on because energy doesn't die. That's a scientific fact. So if energy doesn't die, then we have to ascend to somewhere. We go somewhere different. And what goes with us is all that stuff that powered us. Our battery goes elsewhere.
Exactly.
We're all
It's just,
energizer buddies.
hey, boom, boom, boom. I was doing that the other day. It was fun. That was great fun.
So communication. Um, are you communicating with yourself? Ask yourself that first. I think that's a good place to start. What is your self talk like? What does it sound like to live inside your head? You know, what is it, the stuff that you tell yourself? What is it that you visualize about yourself? And then ask yourself, are those facts? Or are those just responses? Are you living off of emotional response only? Are you able to bring your emotional intelligence to a place where you don't allow other people to trigger you with their vocalizations of what they're going on? Because we're all on this journey together. We all have our own trials and tribulations to go through. And some of them might look a little the same, but most of them are going to be different because it is all very personal. What affects somebody and becomes a trauma may not affect another person the same way and become a post traumatic stress issue, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I have noticed over my healing process is that I have gotten really, really, really good at immediately going, don't say that about yourself. I have a, oh, that was so stupid, or oh, that, oh, you're dumb, or
Mine
whatever
mine
negative
was, "You
thought.
fucking idiot."
And whatever those are, I have gotten really, really, really good at immediately going, oh, no, that's not true. Or, oh, don't say that about yourself. Or, whatever the case may be. I have noticed that I've gotten really, really, really good at catching it. And now that's like, I feel like that's step two is, step one is admitting and recognizing. Step two is like having that boom, I recognize that I did it that fast. And then step three is just where you don't have it anymore. You've now trained yourself not to do it. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm very close.
What could help you is this. There is a law of the universe that covers this, and I'm sure you've heard it. I don't know which one it is because I'm not that versed. However, it is when you say something negative about yourself, you can stop yourself, and that's great. Awareness is absolutely the first step. But that thing that you said negative about yourself, your brain still believes. If you say something positive about yourself, it negates the negative thought. And now you're back to square one, zero. So always combat that negative thought with 2 to 3 personal affirmations of what you are that is not that negative thing. And that that is what slowly changes that, because now instead you're taking away the negative with another positive, and now you're adding 2 positive things about yourself all the time. So, I might tell myself I'm stupid, but then I'll come back and go, no, I'm a compassionate, loving human being that makes mistakes sometimes, and that's okay. And that statement right there put something in my head that is good, because my subconscious is going to remember at least 1 to 2 of those things that were good and not that one negative thing that I said about myself.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will try to start doing
And it
that.
ain't
I'm
easy.
like,
It is not easy,
no.
especially if you have never said anything nice about yourself before. That is the boat that I lived in for a very long time, where all I could do was catch it and accept that I'm not there yet. But eventually, when I was able to start telling myself the strengths that I do have, because I do have strengths, I may not see them all the time. They may not be present all the time, but they are within me all the time. So I just have to remember, I have to make myself remember. And if I say it out loud, voicing it to the universe makes it that much more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, that goes in with the same thing that we've been saying, though, is like how you speak to yourself literally is, either lowers your vibration or raises your vibration.
Exactly. If you wake up in the morning thinking, oh my God, I'm awake again. Didn't die last night in my sleep. That sucks. Guess what? You're probably going to have a very low mood day. You're going to be miserable. And it's going to carry on day after day until you can wake up in the morning and go, it's a new day, a day to try something new, maybe. Maybe I'm going to get something different done today. Maybe something new will happen today. Be ready for the unexpected in the positive way, and more positive things will start happening to you, and probably unexpectedly because you always expect the negative on the norm. That was me, always expecting the negative.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I used to be as well, you know? I mean, like I spent a long time beating myself up, and I mean, I was someone that, that those emotions were shut off, and that mysterious disease appeared,
Yep.
so I had fibromyalgia.
Mhm.
And I mean, I still have flare-ups from time to time, but I also from talking to a lot of women that have had fibromyalgia that are in the spiritual community, we all every single one of them that I have talked to has agreed that we believe that fibromyalgia is literally it's a disease with no test. With no cause, no rhyme, no reason, and they don't have. It's something that they've given name to, that they can't find a cause for.
Yep.
And all of the women that I've talked to that have had it and that are spiritual all agree that it is literally the trauma that's trapped in the body.
Mhm.
And it's, and I spent a year where I hardly could get out of bed. And, a lot of it was just how awful I felt and the trauma that I had experienced, and I wasn't letting it go. I was just keeping it on, and I was keeping myself in the same situations. Once I started setting boundaries and removing myself from those situations, all of a sudden I have more energy. I have more life to me. I have, now I'm in bed pretty early, like 10 o'clock's my bedtime, y'all. And but I am up at 6 a.m. every morning. Boom. You guarantee I am up. I am feeding horses. I am, I'm sweeping the floors. I'm cleaning the house, whatever it may be, and it has gone a long way for me by changing my communication with myself. You are a beautiful human being. You are a good mom. You are good at your job, those kinds of things. You are a fantastic person. You are full of love. You are full of light. All of those things, the more that I have experienced them and the more that I have come to believe them, the better I feel, and I don't hurt anymore like I
Right.
used to.
Right. And it just like you said, fibromyalgia is one of those diseases that is exactly like that. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Well, the rhyme or reason is usually a traumatic background somewhere. Somewhere trauma happened. And there's a great book called The Body Keeps a Score. And it is all about how trauma metabolizes in the body, why trauma metabolizes in the body. It explains your fight or flight response systems and what happens, and then what happens when all of those get shut down by trauma, because trauma does change the way your brain works. And the only way to change it back is to go into those places where it got changed, realize that it got changed, and then be willing to try something new, see something different, make some sort of meaning from what had happened. Now, there is no meaning for trauma. Trauma is essentially bad. It happens for no reason. But you can go back afterwards and find meaning in it. Find meaning for yourself that essentially heals those mental portions within yourself. It's not easy, it's not comfortable, nobody likes it. But when you're able to do it, that's when real big change happens.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it is very much communication with your body. Just that. That's exactly that.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I know we've talked about it on previous podcasts before, but your body is the dowsing rod. It is literally, your satellite dish that receives information. So then, you have a processing unit that tells you, like you just have to learn to listen to it, like kind of like the athlete that has pushed themselves too far. They feel an injury, right? They like, and kind of like, what is another one? Oh, I don't know. I'm not coming to another good analogy. The athlete's the best one I got, I guess. But yeah, I mean, like, think about it though. Like, really, like, your body tells you what you need to know. And if it has a way of reacting to emotions. It has a way of reacting to other people's emotions, like that aggression that we were talking about earlier. It's got a way of making you, fold in on yourself or open up or whatever the case may be. And you just have to really, really pay attention to what's going on in here. Because like the other day, I cricked my neck and it was by stretching like this. And like I was reaching for something that fell behind the, like beside the dryer, and there's like this much space, and I was like, oh, my little arm's long enough I can reach. Oh, I'm just not quite. I
Yeah.
was like, oh,
Ouch.
oh, why did I do that? I was not listening to my body not being able like to reach, and so I stretched further, and what did I do? Snap. And I still have a knot.
Oh, yeah. Like, I could tell you that my own intrapersonal communication was down because I couldn't tell you when I was hungry. I couldn't tell you when I was thirsty. You know what? Your body will tell you when it's hungry and when it's thirsty. It's ingrained from us as children. When we are hungry, we will eat, and when we are thirsty, we will drink. It is how we listen to our bodies, but we learn to not listen to our bodies when we're told, you have to eat all that food, you're not full, finish your plate. Or when you tell your parents you're not hungry, but they're making you sit down and eat right at that moment. We all have bodies that work on different scales. Not all of us need the same amount of sleep. Not all of us need the same type of foods. I don't eat steaks and a lot of meat anymore. My diet has switched to mostly vegetarian. But when I try to force myself to eat a meat product every day, I start feeling crappy. Well, that is my body telling me that I don't need that every day. And I'm healthy with not having it every day. I need to listen to those cues. Well, those cues are really hard to hear if you've come from a place of trauma and you've been told that what you're feeling isn't correct. What's going on with you isn't correct, and you should be this way, and you should be that way, and you should be this way. None of that actually applies. Your bodies are unique. Our bodies are unique.
And so basically though, like, and it falls right into communication because that is your body's way of communicating to you your needs. That's like so if you're having a conversation with your body, you need to be open, you need to be present, you need to do all of the skills to listen to your body. Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills. You need to listen to your you need to listen to your body and the cues that it's giving by effectively communicating with it and using all of those skills that we've talked about. You listen with your heart, listen with compassion. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be aggressive to yourself. Really pay attention to what it is that is being told to you and listen.
We have a whole mass of needs. The list of human needs can be practically infinite. We need subsistence, physical sustenance, air, food, water, shelter, health, medicine, physical safety, rest, sleep, and movement. We need connection, affection, appreciation, attention, companionship, harmony, intimacy, love, sexual expression, support, tenderness, warmth, touch, community, belonging, celebration, cooperation, equality, inclusion, mutuality, participation, self expression, and sharing, understanding, awareness, clarity, discovery, learning, making sense of life. There's security, freedom, leisure, to matter, meaning, transcendence. These are all needs that eventually we need to have filled. Then the list of now I lost my other list. I had a whole nother list of emotions, the emotions that spur the needs. There's a whole list of those that go on forever too. Are you able to listen to your body? I think first and foremost, that's what most of us need to relearn in order to really learn how to communicate effectively with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, you're not gonna be able to effectively communicate with someone else until you're effectively able to communicate with yourself.
Right.
Because
And
if
then,
you're,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because if you're gonna, beat yourself up, then what kind of energy are you bringing to other people?
Exactly. Exactly. And that goes into authenticity and needs. Your needs in the negative and then your needs in the positive. Here's some examples. I can't stand it when things are messy and chaotic. That's the negative. Needs in the positive. I enjoy things when they were clean and tidy. What does your language sound like to yourself? Do you sound like, I don't want to be trapped in our relationship? Or do you sound like, I want to make sense of space and flexibility within our relationship? That's two totally different views on the same problem, whether you're taking it from a negative to a positive. I don't want to be controlled or told what to do. Maybe instead, having some autonomy and freedom are so important to me. We tend to focus solely on the negative because we're uncomfortable, when there's actually a positive way to express that we have needs that need to be met. And that's all we really have to think about is how are we expressing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I
Well,
think I have exhausted my notes.
yeah, yeah, well, I pretty much exhausted mine a while ago. I've been off cuff now.
I think we've been off cuff for a little bit.
Oh, well, let's see. What is our little so we would like you to, of course, take what resonates with you. Hey, I said it right the first time. And leave the rest behind. I never say that word right. I finally did it.
And then you got so excited you had to celebrate right in the middle of the statement.
And of course, you should I encourage the viewers to check out our newly revamped website. It's had some updates. Thanks to our, what does he call himself? Tech
Oh,
support, tech manager,
something
whatever.
like that.
Or we'll find out when he gives us his business card. But check out our website at www.towhichisle.com and find our podcasts there. We're podcast in many places, Amazon, Spotify. And also you can find us on YouTube and Facebook, which I'm trying to be better about at least posting stuff to Facebook. So if you see me, I'm out there.
I'm trying to post stuff to Facebook too. I just don't like being on social media so much.
I know, neither do I. I've since cutting it from easy access on my phone. Um, I don't get into it very often. I'm missing people's birthdays and I feel bad about it, but at the same time, you know, they're getting happy birthdays from everybody else. They don't necessarily need it from me, but I do see it and I do think of everybody when I see that I've missed their birthday. I go, oh, hope belated. Sometimes I say happy birthday and I forgot I even said happy birthday and then I end up saying it twice. So
I've done that a time or two.
oops.
Yeah.
Anything, let's see, did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, until next time, we wish everybody light and love. And oh, what were we going to talk about next time? I think we had discussed what we were going to. We
We did.
we're done. Wait,
The
can we talk
cycles of
about
the
it?
universe. I think we
The
did.
cycles. We're going to talk next time about cycles, because I know I've experienced many in my life, and I've got actually one that I really want to share with you all that you probably don't even recognize as a cycle. So I'm really excited about next time.
Yay. I'm excited about next time too. So long, everyone. Until next time. Light and love.
Light and love. Bye, everybody.